All right, hello and welcome. My name is Myre, and it's time to check out the Star Citizen Live EU/PU gameplay features video for SCL. Earlier this week, they fielded some questions to the community, and I haven't actually checked any of them yet, so this is all going to be very different and interesting and new for me. So let's go ahead and check it out.
Oh, hello. I didn't see you there. I'm just enjoying my planetary report from the Planetary Society. Shout out. Hi, everybody.
Nice plug.
I'm Jared. This is Star Citizen Live. If you've never seen Star Citizen Live before, it's where we take about an hour out of our end of our week, hang out with some developers, answer some questions, watch how they work, goof off a little bit, try not to get fired. On the show this week, we have members of our esteemed EU/PU features team, gameplay features team, starting with Dan Truffin. Below, say hi, Dan.
Hello, everyone.
We've got Jacob off into the corner there,
Hello.
and Thorsten off to the right here. How you doing?
Hello.
Thorsten, we were just talking before the show. You're relatively new to CIG. You started how long ago? 4 months ago?
I'm in my fourth now, yes.
4 months ago. I usually have a rule against having people on within the first 6 months.
Oh, I broke
that
it.
might disqualify me as well.
Got some.
I've
new
only been
blood.
here since January myself.
Oh,
Really?
geez.
Yeah.
Well, welcome aboard, guys. Welcome.
They've
welcome
got
to your
babies
first,
here.
Star Citizen Live experience. Dan, of course, is no stranger to Star Citizen Live. He's old hat, but a good hat. And I don't know where I'm going with that. We're off the rails
Well,
anyway.
hopefully, because they have like such new people here, they'll be more prone to slip and give us actually good information. You know.
All right, we're talking EU/PU gameplay feature team. Now, the EU gameplay feature team works on many aspects of Star Citizen, but not all aspects. And we're saying this at the beginning because, as we usually do, we put a thread up on Spectrum to collect a bunch of questions and listed out a bunch of things that the team was responsible for and worked for, and nobody read it.
As usual.
The questions were just all over the place, man. Good questions. Things I'd like to know the answers to, but just not what this team's working on, guys. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. But we were
Credit to Disco. I mean, when they do these Q&A things, they basically say they tell you exactly what the teams are working on, but what the teams are working on and what the questions that they expect you to ask may not always kind of fall in line with what people want to know. I think I asked a question about something. I might also be in the territory of people asking the wrong question, but we'll see. I think I asked a question really late into the questions being opened up, so the chances of mine being in there are going to be very slim. We'll see.
able to find a lot of questions that the team does work on. Plus, we are going to take questions live from the chat. So if you are watching live on Twitch TV right now, you can submit your questions with the word question in capital letters, surrounded by brackets. We're going to pull that out of the chat. Let's start off by talking about the things that you do work on. So why don't we introduce the team and some of the stuff that they do work on so that we can shape the questions that come in live. Dan, what is the EU/PU feature team and what are they responsible for?
The EU/PU feature team is responsible for, I'd like to say, a lot of things. A lot of other feature teams have very strict areas of responsibility, which is like actor feature team. They really focus on that actor and everything the actor can do, or vehicle feature team, everything about ships. We tend to take a bit of everything and a bit of the things that don't fall into those categories. So you guys saw us do mining. While that you could consider a vehicle feature team, it was something completely working on its own. It worked for FPS, it worked for ships, it worked for vehicles like ground vehicles. So it wasn't falling in any of the other teams. So we took it, we made it, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Other things that are falling into here are continuations from mining and all the mining gadget stuff like this. Refining stations, any type of refining on a ship. We're also going to be looking
Ship
into,
refinery, okay.
things like long distance probing. We're going to be looking into making the Starfarer into a refueling ship.
Thank you.
So again, it's not how a ship flies exactly, but there's stuff that a ship can do. It's closer to the gameplay element of that ship rather than the second-to-second flight controls or IFCS and stuff like this.
Yeah.
So
ship refinery is definitely something that I want to hear more of. Also, ship refueling, as I said with the Starfarer, is something I hope they go into some detail with too. As for refinery, I know people have been talking and they've been wanting a refinery ship. I kind of feel like I remember the Orion has a refinery. Also, the Mole doesn't have refinery written anywhere in there, but it has like that one corridor that looks like it could have a refinery in there, and it'd be really, really upsetting if they don't actually do something with it.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. Besides that, we're doing a lot of the work that's going to go into what we call, there's an overarching theme here called environmental gameplay. These are things, smaller things that happen in the environment that make the environment feel alive. One of the tiny little things that we're looking into right now is a laser trip mine. Yeah,
A laser
it is a gadget
trip
and
mine.
it can be considered a weapon,
Okay.
but initially we're going to be using level designers who will place it in various places, or mission designers, and be able to create the blockage for the player, that the player has to circumvent in a different way, or maybe use a crate, push it with a tractor beam into the laser's path that trips the mine, and then you can pass, stuff like this. It's a lot of small little things like traps, things like this that allow us to make the world richer and make the player not just walk from A to B. They have to be cautious. This is a hostile environment. It's been rigged by other people. It's been trapped. It's unstable. When you walk in a wreck, you expect that wreck to start squeaking and collapsing on you. When you go into a cave, it shouldn't just be a walk in the park. There should be things that happen. There's things that fall on you. You have to be careful. So all of this environmental gameplay is a big umbrella under which a lot of smaller little things fall under.
So back in the day when they talked about caves, like really, really early on, before caves came out, they showed really early, I guess, discovery things for cave hazards, like stalactites falling off the ceilings and that kind of stuff. But yeah, like, that's cool.
Also environmental gameplay, you could call it, is loot generation. How do we generate loot in the world? We generated minables and harvestables, stuff like this, but we never generated like, how do I spawn a shotgun in a crate? And how do I make sure that every time I open that crate, there's something else in there? It's not the same crate with the same shotgun. It's going to be, I don't know, it's going to be money. It's going to be an armor. It's going to be a bottle of vodka. It's going to be dirty underwear. Whatever you happen to find when you open a crate. And that also is something that I think we'll be having a bit more discussions, because it's one of the subjects we put on the forum, and hopefully someone has some valid questions on that subject.
Yeah, so loot, generation of loot, and also in a game like Star Citizen, like the believability of loot as well. He talked about dirty underwear. Back in like 2.x, like they released a very early concept of loot where they added money and the concept of money, and they added a way of getting it without doing missions, which was to go to SPK and to interact with boxes and items of Radagast and Big Bennies and stuff to get UEC. So what I mean by believability is like, you know, if you were to go to SPK and you'd interact with that box, if you just stay there for like, 10 minutes, will the box respawn? Where will you have to go for this loot? Are they going to have to start adding more like places for you to go, more elements for you to find, things like that? DJ, thank you so much for the resub.
Again, there's a lot of things that make gameplay work properly and fun for the players.
Cool. So what we put a list on the we put a list of topics up on the spectrum, and to answer the question from Lethality about whether I was actually complaining that people were asking about that, there's a list. It's just reading, Lethality. That's all I'm saying. I'm just saying read. It doesn't say subscriber items, and it doesn't say hacking on it. So I mean, you don't have to know a whole lot, right?
I love how Discord passively takes these shots at people for like doing the wrong thing, But yeah, about like the trip mines and stuff, that's interesting. I wonder if we'll be able to get that as a player, because you bet that people are going to booby trap their multi-crew ships, especially the people who only are going to be using silver blades and that kind of thing, to make it so if someone wants to board their ship when they don't know about it, they're going to be in for a bad time,
It's hard.
Shout out to lethality.
When
Shout out to
people care
lethality
so
asking the tough
much-
questions.
When people care so much about a certain subject, it's very hard for them not to
Yes,
ask a question.
no. And we'll all, and like I said, we do this every single week. So if it's not this show, it'll be next show or the show after that or the show after that. We'll get there eventually. Let's talk about one of the things that were listed on there that that we hadn't actually talked about before, which was long distance probing. So let's start us off. What is long distance probing?
This is a very important topic, this one.
Well, long distance probing is basically a system that we want to introduce where players have a ship somewhere in space and they can send out like probes and place them anywhere in the same system. And those probes will ping and reveal basically objects that are of interest there or anything that might be there. And those objects could be like mining places, derelict stations, ships, anything that we could imagine that you could find there and we could spawn. And so you find something, then what you have to do there is triangulate. So you have to bring in the probes into position. So you get the more precise signal on that. And once the signal strength is enough, you can either decide to generate a quantum beacon that you can basically jump to. You could store that information and sell it to other players. Or what we aim to have there is an analysis gameplay where you basically have a signature, a unique signature of what you found there, and then you compare it on your ship. So basically the drones, the probe sends back the signature and use it on your PC, on the ship, and you compare the signature with everything that you either bought or you collected yourself in the library. And then you get an idea, okay, this might be in Gladius, this could be in a mining field.
Okay.
And then you can still decide to, okay, I jump there and I look at it, or the risk is too high, I don't jump there.
So this is a whole list of things now, and this is so much deeper than what I thought that this long-range scanning thing was going to be. There's a lot to unpack, but let's go with the last thing and then go backwards. So he talked about being able to, and again, this is just them, the most conceptual of like levels, just thinking about how this is going to work. But he talks about how, and this ties back into a few weeks ago when they talk about like scanning, how if you were to scan a field and then you get a specific signal, you would have to kind of like basically compare that to a list of known signals that you have to know what that thing is. Now, does that, so he gave the example of like, so let's say you use your probes and you find something and that signal, according to your list, is like a reclaimer. You're like, oh, that's gonna be a reclaimer over there. That's kind of crazy, but does that mean that like your ship will not come with like a list of known ships like Reclaimer, Gladius, that kind of thing? Does that mean that you as a player will have to, when you first get a ship, scan all these ships to have that in your backlog? Because they've talked about before with the scanning SCL, they talked about how when you scan something, it's going to be an entity on your ship's like computer. So like the more things you scan, the more entities in your logs, and then you can actually trade, as he said before, trade that information with other people, but also have that information stolen too. So I thought before, like back when we were looking at the roadmap about long-range scanning, they talked about using the scanners to, find things. Like you launch the probe and that's it. He brings up this whole gameplay loop of triangulation about launching multiple probes and then using those to find a location inside it. This entire system is what they're going to be using in lieu of blind quantum travel. So instead of just like looking somewhere and going with quantum travel, I don't think we're going to be getting that back, but you'll be able to use this instead, launch the probes. The probes will trigger a probability volume, which will then bring up a random encounter, and then you would then be able to quantum travel to it if the game is like, yeah, there's something there. All in all, it's pretty cool. And as Dart says in chat, it's very similar to how like the Tessa Bannister missions were, where like you as a player didn't like know what was out in that location, and you could have maybe blindly quantum travel to there back in the day. But back then, Tessa was like, okay, something came up on my scanners, go check it out, and she gives you the location. And basically you will be able to beat Tessa Bannister using this system. Like you will be able to send out your scanners, find the signal, like, you know, you compare it to your list of things. That signal is, I don't know, the Bengal carrier, right? And then you can sell that information. And that's interesting, right? Like, again, you're going to have to like imagine here for a second, right? Some years have passed now. We have this tech that they're talking about in the game, and it's Invictus. We haven't seen a Bengal carrier yet. No player has found one out in the wild, and we know from what, you know, CR said before that, like, you know, the Bengal carrier is going to be this derelict you have to find and then bring back up to life if you want one in game for you and your org. So the UES war, no, not even the Warhammer. I don't know what the Bengal is called, but the Bengal will show up in Invictus. You scan that, you now have Bengal data, and now if you ever use your long-range scanners, you can go, oh my god, that's a Bengal. That's kind of cool to think about. But yeah.
So that's the rough rundown of it.
I think what's important here, what we're going to try to introduce here, is that uncertainty. You'll be able to see a graph of how, it's like seeing the drive signature of a ship. You kind of know the M, you know the IR, and you'll get the
cool
curve of
reference.
how strong each part it is, and you might look at it and go like, this looks very similar to an Idris. And when you jump there, you might have a surprise that it's a lot of smaller ships or a fleet or something like this. Or it might look like a hauler that you might want to pirate. And you get there and, oh no, it's actually an Idris with a lot of this stuff being turned off, waiting for prey to jump in, because their signature, once they turn off some of the things on the ship, might look a lot smaller than what it actually is. So it opens up a lot of exploration.
It does, and also the fact that in Star Citizen, no two ships are ever the same unless people are riding a meta, right? So like you can have so many different permutations of the same kind of ship and different kinds of like emission. So the false positives and false negatives of like, oh, that's definitely an Idris or that's definitely a Hammerhead are going to be pretty high, but you know, there's still going to be some degree of confidence that that might be the ship depending on the emissions that thing is giving off wherever that thing is, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it's only 10 minutes in, and I'm already pretty excited. And this is bad for me.
For a lot of players, it also opens up a lot of options for traps and creating interesting scenarios. Where you're kind of going like, well, let's see what happens and who jumps for the bait here. So, and it's up to the players once they get the full analysis to figure out what that thing is. They can jump, they cannot jump, they can sell the information, they can sell it as, oh, I found this very rich asteroid field, and when that person buys it, looks over the analysis data, oh yeah, that looks like an asteroid field, but when they jump there, it's not an asteroid field. There's, I don't know, it's a booby trap. There's a turret on every rock there, and as soon as you jump in, it blows you up. Because the guy that did the analysis didn't go all the way to figure out everything and actually jump there, see himself what is in that space.
I love the idea of selling like analysis data and that kind of thing with degrees of confidence, and oh man, that's pretty neat. That's pretty neat. So someone in chat says, surely there isn't enough content for these probes, maybe in a few years. Well, the thing is, right, like with this particular kind of content, they'll be using what they call probability volumes. So that content doesn't have to exist now. You know, like in the verse, it's just not there. Use a scanner and then it'll spawn that content in. And it doesn't have to be anything unique. It could just be like, okay, spawn in a derelict constellation that will have lootables that they talked about before. That might have like something to salvage, that kind of thing, you know? Like it could easily be put in this year once we have loot generation. I don't see why not.
So
yeah, what is important for us is definitely that it's player skilled base. So the more data you collected, the more precise your predictions are. So the longer you have been doing that already, the more precise your data is, the higher the value is that you can ask for if you sell them.
And the risk reward goes both ways. Let's say you're scanning for something, no, it's not scanning, it's like probing for something, and you find a thing, and then you go like, oh, I want the last detail, I'm going to spend half an hour getting that. By the time you spend half an hour on it, it might be gone, because that might be a ship, might be a player, might be an NPC that just goes away. It's not going to wait there forever for you to get all the data about it.
That's fair.
So it's up to you how much time you want to invest in that analysis part, or do you risk and jump, or do you risk for it to jump away?
There's also an inherent risk there with purchasing this like scan information from other players, even if the scan information is like as reliable as it can possibly be. Because if that player is, you know, shady, they could easily sell you scan data that's too good to pass up. It's scan data of an asteroid field full of nothing but Bexlite. But, you know, the pirates gang might be waiting for you because, you know, it is a too good to be true location, and they're there and they're waiting for you to come to blow you up.
All up to the player.
Is this something you guys have been working on alongside? You know, USP has been working on scanning and radar and stuff like this. So does this work hand in hand? Is this something where you need them to finish before you can really get going?
Yeah, is it downstream or is it tandem?
Separate. It uses the same signatures that we are familiar with, EM, IR, cross section, but the system has to be different. We are talking about finding things over astronomical unit distances. We're not talking about 50 kilometers or 100 kilometers, which is where our radar kind of stops. And we're talking about, this is space telemetry. You're looking at the really large chunk of space and you get some data, you kind of think there's something there, then you bring your probes closer and closer, you get a clearer image, you get a closer location, closer, till you get that pinpoint precise location where you can jump, or you can continue analyzing and figuring out what that thing is before you risk.
Gotcha.
So you didn't really answer that question there. Like, it does seem like maybe perhaps it's not a tandem system. You know, like, so we're gonna have to wait for, you know, for all this other stuff to be released before they can actually get the ball rolling with this, you know, as you said, astronomical unit scanning thing. Spoofing scan info will be kind of interesting. The fact that you'll be able to, with E-War and that kind of thing, if, you know, that does come to be, there's a document for it about spoofing. You might not necessarily be able to spoof scan info, but if you're able to reliably spoof your ship, and then get somebody else to scan your ship, then you could kind of spoof scan info, but it would take a bit of work. You know, it really depends what like a mineable object's like a scan information is compared to, like, I don't know, a hammerhead with certain components turned off.
So I know we're still relatively early days. I don't think this is even on the public roadmap yet, is it? I don't think so.
I'm not sure if it is.
Yeah, if it's overdone, people just won't buy it. Exactly, Spader. Like, no one will buy player scans unless they know the player.
But yeah, it is still early.
You're right.
Without being too prescriptive, what you said astronomical ranges. Are we thinking across the other end of the solar system? Or are we thinking into other solar systems? What are we?
So it's gonna be localized to the solar system, and even then you won't be able to just go like, yeah, do the entire solar system. You'll have to choose it. You'll look on the map and go like, well, there's been a lot of things happening here. I'm gonna send my probes in that area and see if I narrow down. You might go there, it might be nothing, or it might be something don't care about. Or yeah, so
a fix that I'm thinking of already for the whole like spoof thing is the reputation system. If you constantly keep being a shyster, then your reputation for being a scanner is going to go lower and lower and lower, especially if people just out of habit don't buy from players that they don't know, and so the only people you can sell scan data to is NPCs. You know, like, eventually nobody is going to want your scan data, you know?
The probes still have traveling time and a defined amount of fuel they can take. So it's that is a restriction, but yeah, the goal is that one solar system is basically the entire range of one probe. So no going to another solar system with a probe. So you have to travel to another system and then probe there.
Yeah. And also what will happen is we'll have different types of probes. So you might get a probe that has almost the entire system, but the precision of that probe is going to be so bad. That's going to give you an overview. So if you want to narrow it down, you're going to have to use like very precise probes with a very limited range.
So
all right,
that's
cool.
Dan there now saying that they're, you know, Like maybe there could be more than one different kind of probe, you know, depending on what you want. So if probes can travel in any direction, why can't we? Well, who knows? Maybe we might get blind quantum travel back at some point. They've never actually on paper said that we won't, but by the way they make it sound with these probes, it'll likely be better if you just use the probes and don't blind quantum travel. The big issue with blind traveling is that like it then opens up a whole different thing when it comes to combat and people fleeing from combat. But I think with that whole thing, you know, the argument of like why can people quantum travel with their shields, you know, like with their shields down? You know, if you get into combat and somebody takes your shield down, then you shouldn't be able to quantum travel. At least that is the narrative hook they have in things like Star Trek. You know, like the shield, you know, like once your shield deflector system is down, you can't go into warp because you get torn apart by, you know, micrometeors. They could add something like that in Star Citizen, but yeah, I think that's a whole gameplay thing that they have to think about. But the idea of these probes to help you scan and triangulate a massive wide range of like space, as opposed to being one person going alone, makes sense.
And I imagine as we get closer and closer to our first version of this making its way into the PU, you'll hear more about it on ISC and stuff like that. So stay tuned for that. Something else, this actually didn't make the list, so we're going to mention it here for the first time, is something you're working on called atmospheric depth damage. Am I remembering that right?
Atmospheric depth damage.
What is that?
Yeah, that is our basically diegetic system to prevent players from getting to the core of
Crusader.
Is it Crusader?
Yeah.
Where Horizon is based. So, yeah. So
that's
ships
awesome.
will get an attribute which basically defines the atmospheric pressures
How deep
it can
you can
take.
go.
So, for example, like spaceships aren't built for withstanding a lot of atmospheric pressures, right? It's more like from 0 to 1 they can stand, and for that reason we will introduce the attribute of atmospheric pressure resistance, which basically defines how deep a ship could go into cruise.
So he's quoting that Futurama thing, like that Futurama skit. This one.
Dear Lord, that's over 150 atmospheres of pressure. How many atmospheres can the ship withstand? Well, it's a spaceship, so I'd say anywhere between 0 and 1.
But yeah,
Crusader, and then it would start to get damaged.
That doesn't make any sense though, because you have bigger, denser planets and stuff like that. But it's the logic they're using, I guess.
All right, and I'm just gonna go out on a limb because I know somebody in chat's gonna do this. Is there a possibility that also applies to underwater at some point later down the line?
The system is generic enough that it can do that.
That's a good
right
response.
Now we focus on that and make that work, and then we can think ahead.
I tried to get him, Dan. I tried to get him.
No, fair enough. But it's a valid question. But I think there's more of a problem of, do your engines actually function underwater?
Right.
I mean, because if you sink like a rock, you won't care about atmospheric pressure if your engine's over. You're still going to sink eventually. There's no getting out of that. Unless we have a ship that has engines that are built for that. But
a good thing is we have a system that can apply pressure damage, and it's built in a way that it could even create some, in the future, some barrow damage effects. So it is actually aimed to have effects. The faster you have a switch of pressure, the more damage could happen, or different types of damage could happen.
So, I mean, are they... I mean, they're not necessarily saying it, but it sounds like different ships will have different properties of this ADD, this Atmo, this density damage thing. So, like, maybe, I don't know, in the future, a specific kind of ship can go deeper, and that could be a whole gameplay thing for it to go deeper and look for the I don't know, the space whales on Crusader or something.
I'm thinking about that Hunt for Red October gameplay now. Inside the gas giant Crusader. All right, let's talk about loot generation. This is also a relatively new topic for a lot of citizens here. Now, again, as we get closer to release, we're going to do a full segment and a full breakdown on this stuff. So we don't need to go into too much detail, but at its surface level, Dan, why don't you introduce us to the idea of loot generation and what we're working towards?
So the idea came about as we noticed that the actor feature team was working on looting. So the problem came that they were working on looting, but we didn't have anything to loot. They were thinking, yeah, loot from the character you just killed, but that is just a part of the puzzle. We would like to have a rich world in which if I enter an underground facility, well, there's stuff there I can just pick up, I can just loot, I can steal, So there's the legal part of looting where you go there and you find things that belongs to no one, it's yours now. Then there's the stealing part of looting, as in this crate of goodies is in someone's house. He is there. If he sees you do it, that's theft.
Stop right there, criminal scum.
And the loot generation pretty much covers the generation of items, of various types of items based on tags. And I think I can let Jacob talk a bit more about this part because he's doing more the engineering and how that works. So all I can say is that it just pretty much picks from a big pool of items who are tagged in a certain way, the ones that match that location. So if it's a desert medical outpost, I expect to find medical things. I expect to find crates that are, I don't know, refrigerated so they don't melt. If it's a beating heart inside, it doesn't melt in the desert. It needs to have medical brands on the crates, and the items inside, they need to be branded from any of our medical companies. So all of this stuff gets pretty much, we start with the location, and we do various spawn points inside that location where, like on a shelf, it can spawn. We put a point, and that's where a crate where we tag how big can you be. It can spawn, and we can choose how we do this. Where I can choose a medical location where I can just spawn military equipment because that's what I want. That's what my scenario needs.
So lootables in a place like a derelict or like a pirate-owned place like Jumptown kind of makes sense, but I'm not sure how they're going to be able to do this for something like, let's say, any outpost that exists in Star Citizen that's not like, a derelict or pirate-owned, like Deacon's research facility, like that science lab on Yella. Like, if they have lootables there and those all have like a theft tag on them, then, I mean, I guess some people will do it and it'd be cool to have, but just like it just feels like bait for Klesher, like it's literally Klesher bait.
But in general, we want to be very well. This is a medical location, has a medical tag. That tag gets propagated to that. Let's say it's an outpost, the entire outpost. All the spawn points get that tag. Automatically, everything in there spawns medical things. Now, let's say I have a toilet in there. Generally, we don't want medical things to spawn in the toilet. So inside that room, I just go, hey, you are now a toilet. So everything gets a toilet tag now instead of the medical tag.
That's funny.
So that will spawn, every crate that spawns in there will have to be a toilet specific. I might find janitorial equipment. So when I open that crate, the UI will show me, well, there's a mop, there's whatever janitorial equipment is needed in that area.
You are now a toilet.
Is this like the next evolution of the harvestable system? It sounds like something that can be built right on top of
it does sound
the work
like
that you've done for the harvestables.
One for you, Jacob.
Yeah, very, very similar, in fact. In terms of generating the loot containers, it is the same system, just being used in a different way. And like Dan was saying, it's designed to be very, very flexible. The main goal with the implementation at the moment is to make sure that we give our level and mission designers all the flexibility they need to create whatever loot situation they want in a particular area. So yeah, we can, the designers can define what we call a loot archetype, which is a collection of tags that the items should have, maybe some tags that they absolutely shouldn't have. And then from this, the system will generate a loot pool of all of the items that match that archetype to put in any containers the designers give that archetype.
I wonder where this falls in line with Star Citizen's typical idea of like finite resources and stuff like that. Like when you have, you know, things like derelicts and probability volumes and stuff, then sure, those are more or less infinite, right? But like, let's say you have an outpost, then that outpost has to kind of be there permanently. I mean, would it make sense if a derelict just keeps getting like a loot refreshed? I wonder what they, you know, where do they want the, you know, the sim part to end and the game part to, you know, take over, you know?
But yeah, this will be flexible enough that it can take injected tags from the environment around it, like Dan was saying. So you put one of these containers that's got a weapons archetype that just by itself would be able to spawn any weapon. And if you put that in, so a high-tech place, it can get a high-tech tag and then only spawn high-tech weapons. You put it in a pirate place, it'll only spawn pirate stuff. That's the idea. But the real focus is on making it extremely flexible and customizable for our designers so that whatever situation they want, they can have.
So it's a system that they're making just in case the designers want to actually use it. But the question now comes into play, like if they make too much loot readily available, then there'll be less money sinks for the player, you know? Like, so in general, maybe there might only have to be a few different kinds of weapon, you know, otherwise it's going to affect that whole economy thing and there'll be less money sinks in general for players to put their credits down into, you know?
I can see the humorous potential for Growing Pains as this comes online and starts going through and tags, you know, the tags get sorted and expanded out and stuff like this. Are you willing to confirm that we can loot beating hearts, Dan? You mentioned that before.
Could be a medical, like
no.
Yeah, maybe not beating,
mission.
But frozen as that you could actually sell as spare organs, then probably yes. So if you're a hardened pirate and you don't give a shit about the lives of humans, you would raid a medical facility that they're doing heart transplants. You could steal a heart and take it to your boss because he needs a heart transplant. He just gave you a mission to find a heart somewhere. That is a valid mission for us.
Sure.
It's up to the players how evil they want to be.
Sure.
As a follow-up question from the chat, how much consideration is being put into the depth of loot tables to ensure that there is a healthy enough variety? I mean, beyond just setting up the tags, is this going to be we're looting the same 5 items over and over again in a place?
That's entirely down to the designers setting up the areas, setting up the missions. It can be as varied as they want it to be. At the moment, just early stages of development, we've got 2,600 items that can be looted.
2,600?
And yeah, the designers can use the tags to filter down which ones of them should spawn where, when, why, all sorts.
Okay. I feel like that's going to be an answer for most questions for this right now. I mean, because they don't necessarily know what the end goal for the tech they're making is. But again, my big question would be, you know, to the designers now, because Star Citizen wants to be this game where you can get a coffee cup, put it somewhere on a planet, and then go and come back and it's still there. Like the lootables in specific locations, like, you know, how often are you going to want them to replenish, you know? Otherwise, you know, on the one hand, it'd be like, oh wow, this place is barren, right? Someone must have been here. But on the other hand, it's like, oh god, another empty place with nothing to loot.
I think this is a major difference probably from what we get to see in other games where you get a loot table. Is in this chest this is the loot table, this is the chance that each item has of spawning into that chest.
Mm-hmm.
We've gone a bit more different here, where it's like based on what the designer puts, as in a designer can actually put on a crate just bearing green pistol. And pretty much that crate was only going to spawn green bearing pistols if the pistols are tagged correctly with green and bearing and pistol. Generally, they're going to be so we can go. Those tags can be very detailed, again, from a color to the actual manufacturer to the type of weapon to whatever we want to say about that pistol. So semi-automatic, we can say only semi-automatic weapons in this way, or we can just leave the containers like spawn whatever. It's up to the guys building the content. The system is made in such a way to be very flexible for this. Generally, we're going to try to make sense of it. And we don't want beating heart spawning in a underground manufacturing facility. It makes no sense. So this is up to us to filter out the things that don't make sense, because otherwise it's going to be silly. It's going to look like a circus if you can get, I don't know, another like guns in a kid's playground that you can loot. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that
I don't see it being anything more than just trash loot, though, with the odd, like, really cool thing. But, you know, there are other systems in the game, you know, missions, UEC, shops and stuff for things that will actually make your character progress. But this is more like, you know, finding stuff on the side during a mission to sell for extra money, you know?
loot generation came about because the actor feature team had begun working on looting. So this question may bridge the two, so I don't know if this is for you guys or not. But if an NPC is equipped with armor and we kill them, will we be able to take their armor, or will there be a percentage drop system of some other armor, you know, from the loot tables that we're talking about, or whatever? What's the priority?
This is a good question
there?
because it's never been answered.
So I don't want to speak for the actor feature team because they're doing the looting from the actor. But as far as I know, don't quote me on this, but as far as I know, you loot what the guy is wearing.
Okay.
It might not be worth looting because he might be wearing a shit armor that's super heavy that might not even fit in your backpack. But if it's better than the one you're wearing, yeah, no problem. Swap them around and you get a better armor now.
Yeah, I do hope that they do add the whole DayZ element to it, where you've killed this dude, right? So this armor that they're wearing now has holes in it. So even if it was, when they were alive, better than your armor, it might not be worth it now unless they add like armor repairing and stuff into the game, like add a vendor or something.
If he has a weapon that you need, get that weapon.
Because weapon degradation is coming in.
The part where we come into this part, because we don't want to generate what the guy is wearing. It's weird if he wears a sniper rifle, a green armor, and suddenly it's a pink armor with a pistol. It makes no sense. It needs to be a one-to-one relationship. Otherwise, we try to be as visible as possible. Otherwise, this makes no sense. When we can come in is the guy, if he has a backpack or pockets or something like this, we can generate the loot inside those pockets. So the guy might be wearing really poor armor with a shitty weapon, but maybe he's an undercover agent, and inside he has a high-spec suit for whatever that has no emissions, stealth, silenced gun, and stuff like this. So inside, depends on how that character is tagged. So he might be tagged for like shitty equipment on the surface, but really good stuff in his backpack.
Right.
I mean, this is an exception. Normally, if they have shitty equipment, they're going to have a shitty loot in the backpack. But we generate what's in the backpack, what's in their pockets. We also can generate now stuff for a mission, as in put a key card on him, or a tiny note that if you actually bother to open and inspect, might have a key code that you could open some things adjacent to him and stuff like this. Okay. But that is stuff we can generate from a loot generation.
So it sounds like we have the potential to do a healthy little mix of things. You know, what you see that would obviously be on there, and then, you know, stuff that we can hide in pockets and knapsacks and stuff like that.
And that system's already in. You press I to open up the inventory system, and you can see individual pockets and like stuff on your character.
I would like to mention. Sorry, Jacob, go.
I was just going to say, yeah, it's what you see is what you get for the NPCs. If you see it, you can probably take it from. But if you don't see it in a backpack, then it'll get randomly generated according to all the loot archetypes, etc.
Cool.
I would also like to mention something. As scanning comes online, this will be important because you might figure out that guy has important loot in his backpack. He might look like a poor guy, but he's worth killing. But you have to spend your time scanning him and figure out
as
what
FPS scanning,
has, rather than what he seems to have.
All right.
So, I mean, does that mean that the loot will be governed before the person is dead? So the loot is generated on the character in their inventory that's hidden before the character is dead. I don't actually know how loot is generated in other games like that. Like, is there a seed in dungeons and stuff in WoW that governs what everything is going to be in the monsters beforehand? Or what? But yeah, if scanning FPS scanning will tell you what's in their backpack, that'll mean that, you know, the loot is the loot in their backpacks that you can't see, that they can't even access and use against you if they're an NPC, would have to be there on the generation of the character.
Let's move on to harvestables, because that from there. One of the questions we got in the thread was, will harvestables ever have a benefit other than just selling them?
Good question.
Well, right now they have the benefit of selling, which is not much of a benefit. Sadly, we are working to correct that. They need to become more valuable. The other benefit is that you actually can consume them, some of them.
Okay.
You don't want to consume the rantatang or something like this.
Yeah.
The goal is to start using them for manufacturing science. Once we get to work on those parts. So once we get to work on those parts, the idea is that we start being able to extract certain materials for them that can be used to manufacture, I don't know, chemical drugs, explosives, things like this, oils for maintaining your weapon better and maybe removing some of the wear and tear, or yes, various things where it can improve gameplay. We never envisioned this to be a thing where you just go and you get a fruit and you can sell it for 10 UEC. No one wanted that. That's as far as we could go until our priority shifted to something which was the more important than it was. But the system is there to be used once the other puzzle pieces fall in place.
So crafting is back on the table, so to speak?
Like dung explosives.
Exactly. Stinky bombs.
Stinky bombs.
As a follow-up, are there any plans for us to be able to grow crops on like a planet or moon?
Yes.
So Dan doesn't necessarily specify that the player themselves will be able to, you know, craft out of the stuff, but you know, I suppose it's more or less the same thing, but using a node or something for crafting, like in Final Fantasy and that kind of thing, where you need like an oven to cook food and that kind of stuff in, as opposed to doing it where you find the item. But either way, that's kind of cool. It's something that I hadn't necessarily thought about with Star Citizen, in a game that has no levels and that kind of thing, and it's all down to player skill and knowledge, you know, and reputation. I suppose it will still work in an interesting way. I mean, like, if you never used a single like tutorial or anything to play Minecraft, it would take you a while to find out you can make a sword, right? Or even a box. So I'm looking forward to that level of discovery with Star Citizen.
I cannot discuss any further, but yes.
Fair
definitely.
enough. Let's move on to refining.
Refining, okay.
For refining, will this game loop be broken down into different steps of refining or different purities for the end product? Basically, why don't you give us a primer, I guess would probably be most helpful, a primer on how we're expecting refining to work.
Yeah, how similar is it going to be to the current refinery we have in the game is my question.
So basically the ship refining will be drastically different to the station refinery.
Well, there we go. That's the answer.
Like on the station refinery, you bring in your materials, you wait for quite some time, and then you get the end
day
product.
and 8 hours.
For the ships, it is an active process. So the player that is basically running the refinery ship has to analyze the material that is coming in and then decide on the correct process, where the process could be probably, so imagine like there's a scenario, the player had picked up like minerals and metals and has a refinery where there's a furnace, and the furnace will destroy the minerals, so that results in the loss of the minerals, but the metal would be refined and it would be of great quality. For the purities part, that's not something that we account for in our first iteration. We now go for more in a sense of if you are effective, you have less loss of material.
Yeah,
but,
we'd rather go with yield rather than purity, because it's easier for us to track rather than adding a property on each. Let's say you got gold at 57%, then you mix it with gold at 75, then you need to average. We'd rather get less
Yeah.
gold out of the inter. You get pure gold, but it's less gold if you don't do it properly.
Yeah, you don't want to be messing around with carrots and crap like that. Not in a video game. I mean, that's over complexity, I feel.
So the
And
system is
doing the
always
proper-
working towards the highest purity. It's just a question of what the yield is.
Yes. Yeah. It's similar to how you do with station refining right now. What goes out is pure. And you can sell it as an actual gold commodity on the market rather than selling it as unrefined ore, and then you lose a lot of the profits. So what refining kind of aims to do is close a bit that gameplay loop that we started right now with mining, and we have to go to the station and kind of then you sell. We would like to be able to do all of this in the field where I get 5 prospectors or a few molds and prospectors and 1 refinery ship, and that refinery ship becomes like the hub where everyone kind of brings. I mined
love
all
the
these rocks.
idea of
I come
that.
to my refinery ship. I dump my sacks. So the sacks on the prospector become ejectable now.
Mhm.
With a tractor beam, the refinery ship is able to pick them up, attach them to their own ports. They are able to scoop all that stuff into their storage. Dump the empty sack. Prospector
Oh,
picks it
yeah.
up, goes back to mine again.
Okay.
Now the refinery ship is running, constantly churning. It's constantly running whatever the guys bring, and is trying to not mix the minerals with the metals and kind of separate, and trying to think, well, on this batch, I'm going to run this process because there's higher chance of yielding, of getting this material that I'm interested in. Might not care about aluminium when I got the Grecian in there, or I might dispose of some diamonds if I have some hephaestonite or whatever high price material.
Yeah.
So it's going to constantly, there's going to be this choice where like, oh, if I add this catalyst to this furnace or this tank, I get to this reaction, I get to extract this and that. So it's going to be a lot of choices for the players. Obviously, as per usual with all of our systems, things can go awfully wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And if you add the wrong catalyst or don't watch the
Oh.
pressure, don't watch timers and what's supposed to happen, don't stop the reaction.
You just
needs to
explode in the
happen,
mushroom
things
cloud.
might go boom. Or
Yeah.
not only go boom, but you might just lose the material. You might just get a shit ton of slack.
Yeah.
Sorry for my use of funny language.
The word shit. Yes. So, oh man, I mean, like, so this is something we've been wanting for a while. Like earlier today, we went mining, and you know, for the now, it's just like you go ahead and you mine, you take it to the station, you come back, right? But with an organization, you want this kind of like group effort where you have people down on the ground, you know, like hand mining. You want people in prospectors going after the bigger rocks, and you want that like central area, that central hub that they talk about with this refinery ship that like people will be going back to, and like, you know, oh man, I can't wait to dump my sack on a freaking I can't wait to offload my my minerals and stuff on a refinery ship. But the way he makes it sound as this like hub ship, it makes it sound like those if anyone's played Command and Conquer, those like those bases that you start off with, like a mobile base, right? It would mean that, like, you know, if you're an org doing this, you have this like central point that's just like pirate bait. But it's Dan always is the dev that excites people and makes you like just like I guess, you know, people always use that term imagine, you know what I mean? Like he makes you imagine, he makes you really, really overhyped. I want this.
That is what it will be. You'll be really annoyed at that point and you'll use those curse words. So that's pretty much the idea. The goal is to create this gameplay loop where at this point you add the trader, not the trader, the hauler. He's not a trader. He will help this mining operation. He will be coming every 5 minutes, comes, takes whatever was refined by the Starfarer, puts in his cargo hold, goes sell to the market.
Right.
Come back, and that creates an entire operation that an organization can run for hours and just like keep churning profit.
So he says Starfarer, but I don't think he means Starfarer. I don't think he means it anyway, unless it's a variant that's a refinery ship.
The difference is the Starfarer might not be able to refine as good as the station does with like 95% yield.
So he said Starfarer again. I don't know if he's overstepping and he's revealing something of Starfarer variant. You see Disco's face is like, ooh, I'm gonna have to correct him there. You see these two guys are like, oh my god, is he saying the Starfarer? But like, I don't think he means Starfarer.
But it doesn't matter, because what you might get 80% or 60% doesn't even matter, because what you're transporting is so much smaller and condensed in value. You don't have to transport unrefined ore and ship by ship, and it takes forever. So you're transporting very high yield going there, selling, ship comes back. And this is where another fun part comes in. You actually get pirates coming in and preying on this chain.
That's
they
what
might
I
destroy
thought,
the
yeah.
prospector. They might destroy the refinery. They might destroy the hauling ship that is transporting the refined stuff to the station. And this is where you hire mercenaries or get your organization people to come in and protect your operation. Some will have to fly with the transport ship. Some will have to protect the refinery ship. So it creates this entire ecosystem where you have people preying on each other, helping each other, trying to make as much money as possible in as little time as possible. Right?
Yeah. So for clarification, because some people have heard of a refinery being on a Starfarer, that's very specifically for gases to turn into like fuel for your ship to go, and then you will use the Starfarer to also refuel other ships. They have never spoken about the Starfarer being a ship that can refine rocks and minerals. But maybe there might be a variant. Maybe Dan knows something that we don't. Dan does know something that we don't, but maybe he misspoke. Right now, it's just question marks, you know?
Other than waiting for an entire day for the station to refine stuff.
So it sounds like if we were to really illustrate the differences between ship-based refining and station-based refining, we're talking about a far more active and involved process for the player on ships.
There's no AFK refining. No AFK refining in any way.
You have to pay attention to all the tidbits of the refining process.
Yeah. So like right now, there are like maybe like 8 or 9 different kinds of refinery processes that you can use at a refinery station. I really wonder how that translates into a player-made refinery ship. Obviously, all these numbers and things can change. The refinery methods and how long they can take on the stations can also change. But right now, we're using dynamic solventation in HRL 2 to refine some minerals, and it's going to take us 1 whole day and 8 hours at the station. Like, how long is refinery going to take for players in Star Citizen when this refinery ship comes in? You know, like, because I couldn't see somebody sitting down there for 8 hours. I mean, for even like for 24 hours and 8, you know, to freaking, who knows? Who knows? Because, you know, there are other methods as well. Like I could have refined that stuff in 30 minutes. That was an option for me, but I just didn't because I wanted the maximum yield.
The temperature, it's like similar to mining, but a little bit more complex, because there on the refining ship you have the reactor that could have a various amount of methods. So like as already mentioned, there could be a furnace, there could be electrolyte system that could grow or help grow or separate crystals. Like you could add in some solvents like acids that would help you, and the entire reactor is built around that. So you could basically, in the end, our goal is to have you, as the owner of the refining ship, tailor your the refining process to your demands. So
I think that's so cool. And you know, I wouldn't even mind, right? Like if we have like, you know, 12 different kinds of refinery like options. I don't know the exact number, but we have many at the moment, depending on your needs of time and yield, right? I would not mind if they kept things as they were and it would literally take 32 hours to make to refine the load, if we knew ahead of time. And then, you know, like I could refine for half an hour, and then like somebody else in the guild has their time slot, as you know, as long as we know we get stupid amounts of like, you know, stuff at the end of it. It'd be kind of cool. Ridiculous time, you know, insanely time consuming for one person. But if you're in a large enough guild, then it's just a thing you do. And I love the idea of that.
So, for example, imagine a situation where you or your friend is focusing on mining just minerals. So you wouldn't have a furnace there, right? You would have prepare your reactor in a way that the reactor is more efficient with minerals than with metals.
I love that.
So this is basically our goal, that you customize it to your demands.
You see, I didn't get Star Citizen to be a miner, but I mean, like, I just hope that all these other gameplay loops become as involved as this, because this is just like, yeah, please.
Now, one more thing to add to that, it's you're customized to what you want to refine, but you can also customize. The idea is to allow the player to customize the Starfarer, because the Starfarer was a ship that's supposed to do refueling, and it was also supposed to do refining. So it's up to the players how many tanks for storing stuff, for storing solids, for storing liquids and gas, for storing fuel, or how many reactors does he equip on that ship. So it's up to him how much he wants to store, and maybe the Starfarer is the one that sells because you don't have a hauling ship. And he just comes back, keeps refining, because then he needs a lot more transporting capacity. So yeah, we're trying to offer all these options, and then it's up to the player to play however he sees fit and whatever the situation needs.
So maybe perhaps the Starfarer might be the ship for refining. We still don't know. Dan could just be using the word Starfarer just because, like, whatever. But yeah, that's interesting. Everything that we know of this Starfarer is all about gas refining and that kind of thing. But Dan used very specific words. So now everything I've known about the Starfarer is kind of up in the air. And now I kind of expect the Starfarer to be able to do this. I'm not sure exactly how it'll be able to do this. But yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting development. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
Now we don't generally do when
Via
questions on the
modularity,
show.
perhaps. Yeah.
We leave the when questions to the Star Citizen public roadmap. That's all the best and the most accurate when information that we have is on that roadmap, folks. That said, the stuff that we're talking about here, the refining, is this theory crafting of something we're going to work on someday in the future, or is this stuff that we're actively developing right now?
It's in design.
Okay.
Design is done and approved. It's waiting an actual programmer to finish some of his current work and to jump on this.
So that's just
awesome.
So it's all theoretical for now. But if they do decide that the Starfarer is the ship for this, I really do hope that I really do hope that the Starfarer gets this gold standard pass early, because that thing is just such a bum to explore. I hate the Starfarer's current layout.
So signed off, approved design, just waiting for resources to get going.
Pretty much.
Okay.
So again, it's gonna wait on require design to say it's a Starfarer or whatever, or vehicle design. So again, he's using the Starfarer conceptually here. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is the Starfarer, because it's not even something they're working on actively. And
it's soon with the TM, but yeah, fairly soon. we're not looking in this in years and years from now. We're waiting for one feature to finish, and we're going to be looking at this.
All right. Let's see. We've been talking about refining. You mentioned refueling. Let's slide into the next one. Refueling. The Starfarer is probably our most obvious, the refueling ship out there, but there are other ships that are supposed to be able to have this capacity. How are we thinking refueling's working? Where are we going with refueling?
In what sense? Like,
well, I mean, are we talking about the 737s with the little nose cone, and somebody comes up and they attach? What are we doing?
Yeah, that's exactly what we are talking about.
Yeah,
so for the Starfarer refueling, which is the one that we are working on right now, is that we have a boom arm where the player in need has to dock to, and then the refueling process can start. Yeah. So I think I saw the question where it was about will we have drone refueling? Yeah, that's not yet the plan of the system. So the plan is right now to have a very direct system, because from my personal point of view, it's even the more interesting one.
Oh yeah, true.
Because imagine a ship that is docked to the boom arm, you do one slight movement, and it's something that both players have to pay attention in this process, right? So it's active on both sides. For the drone part, it would be more passive on one side or even passive on both sides. So for me personally, this one is the most interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, Vulcan pilots and Vulcan owners or whatever are going to be a bit upset about that, but yeah, I agree as well. But when the drone gameplay comes in, that'd be kind of cool too, and it could still be somewhat similar in terms of gameplay-wise, actually getting the drone attached to the ship's nozzle or whatever. But the whole having to then be perfectly still, so otherwise you'll yank the hose out of the Starfarer or smash, it's cool. It's really interesting. It's just
okay. We have some other follow-up questions for refueling here. will refueling be doable in motion, or will crafts have to come to a complete stop to proceed?
There we go.
And because we are using right now the docking system that we already have
With the Merlin.
So like the Merlin to Connie docking, we rely on that full setup right now. But actually it's a good point, because we have to pay attention to it. It wouldn't make sense for some ships to be dragged basically by the Starfarer, so we have to adapt the rules as it goes. But yeah, for the first iteration, we definitely will just have the well-known docking.
So he doesn't answer the question here, because you can actually dock while in motion with the Merlin. There's a bug if you're going too fast where there's a snapping motion and then explosion motion, but yeah, he doesn't actually answer the question.
We will use exactly what the docking system offers. This was a nice surprise for us, because we were looking initially and doing it a bit more simplistic, where you're just fairly close and there's a fuel transfer. But then docking came online, and we're like, wait, we could just use this, and we get the connection between two ships for free. So now the Starfarer is gonna, same as with docking, we're gonna try to do this where if you maintain heading and velocity on the mothership, let's call it the mothership, the child ship can come and attach. Basically, as long as you're not flying, this ship is not doing left, right, flying up, down, and it's constant heading and velocity, you'll be able to, pretty much from your perspective, you'll be more or less static.
Thank you. So Dan answered the question, and yeah, you will be able to do this in motion.
And you just come, you attach to it, and then you're basically attached and flying at the same speed.
Sick.
The problem comes, because this is a thing we bumped into, and we're like, oh, how do we do this? What happens when someone runs out of fuel? Because generally when you need refueling, you're out of fuel.
Don't do it in atmosphere.
The moment where you are not going to be able to do in motion refueling, because you cannot catch up to the other ship. So first of all, what we did was allow the ship that needs refueling to still move very, very slowly, and only during the refueling maneuver. Basically, the ship maintains a very little amount of fuel to get you out of trouble for the refueling process. It doesn't allow you to use that fuel for flying or dogfighting or something like this. But once you go into refueling mode and you're attaching to a Starfarer, it allows you to very slowly drag yourself to that fuel port.
Okay.
Now, if that Starfarer was moving at even 100 meters per second, you're not going to catch up. So, yeah, honestly, if you're asking whether you're going to see in atmosphere, flying through the clouds, refueling in the middle of a dogfight, probably not.
At least not the first version.
Yeah, but
probably Elite, probably.
No logical reason why anyone would build a space refueling rig for something like that. It's needed in atmosphere for our F-15 whatever fighters, but really in space, where everything is more or less relative to the guy you're flying with, it needs to be.
But when have players ever been restrained to what is necessary logically, Dan?
Well,
yeah, Dan.
I mean, can a Starfarer refuel a Starfarer?
Yes.
Then we're going to see some amazing centipede action going.
True.
The problem is that while you're in refueling, you can only be refueled or refueling someone else.
Yeah.
We never thought of it as
daisy chaining Starfarers together.
That becomes a possibility, but I'm a bit worried if we open that can of worms.
I'm pretty sure board gamers are already trying right now. All right. Speaking of refueling, is the refueling is in active development right now? Is this because it's a prerequisite for Pyro?
It's not
prerequisite
exactly
for Pyro. No.
It's something that's going to help Pyro a lot. Finding fuel in Pyro is not going to be as easy as in Stanton. This is a torn down place. Everyone has left the building a long time ago. Or the people that are there and want to sell you fuel either are going to try to rip you off, or you're going to pay everything you have to refuel. So you're going to be relying on players. You're going to be relying on other people to come in with fuel from Stanton and bring it in there and sell it to you at whatever price. So the problem also comes with Pyro is it's very hard to find a station to refuel. They're
It's like
they're far between. So you might be, oh, I'm in the middle of nowhere now. There's no way for me to get back to that station where I know there's fuel. Hey, can someone come help me? Someone come help me comes with a dose of risk, because someone come help me might come with guns. But yeah, this is where you have to trust other players, and this is where some of our reputation thing is going to come in handy, as in you look over who you're dealing with. You go, well, this guy's been killing everyone that moves.
Yeah.
I'm not refueling with you. I'm not telling you where I am.
Yeah, so this is something that really relies heavily on a reputation system that works. I mean, right now, someone come help me is almost always a dick bag because they can be, right? Like, and also the system that we have in place at the moment just isn't that great. It hasn't really been changed since its implementation, the whole service beacons thing, and anybody can pick up your beacon, and well, the moment you make one, everybody can currently see it in the game, even if they don't pick up the mission. So it's a mixed bag at the moment. Hopefully when, Starfarer refueling comes in, they will have played around with the service beacon system, made it, with building blocks or whatever, as opposed to what it currently is with Flash and just being not so good. But yeah, like it's a whole can of worms when it comes to trusting players. And one would hope, and it's not something they've talked about very recently, but one would hope that NPCs can also come and help you as well, especially in places where players might not be online or might be very remote. But yeah, there needs to be the NPC element as well, I feel, for this too, because many players suck.
Very much.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that while Star Citizen is a map,
and that's not what I mean, Darge. What I'm saying is that what they've said is that the Flash UI is just a pain in the ass to keep changing over and over again. That's why it hasn't changed.
massively multiplayer game. It is a multiplayer game. Some systems will be a little more friendly to the solo players than others. Pyro, from everything I've seen and read and heard and spoken about Pyro definitely seems like it's dangerous to go alone. Bring a friend.
Exactly.
Most people
last
don't
question
have
we're
friends.
feeling before we move on. Ground vehicles. Are refueling ground vehicles ever going to be a thing? I mean, do they even need gas right now? I don't think so.
Are they battery operated?
It's also like, I don't think they have a fuel right now, do they? So
they used to back in 3.000 during the Gamescom demonstration. The Dragonfly had fuel, the Ursa had fuel, but like they had maybe 10 minutes of fuel, and then straight afterwards they were just like, yeah, these things don't have fuel anymore.
But the good thing is, so once they would have, we could have a solution to that.
It's not a problem. Once we do this, I think we will have to see how docking between two land-based vehicles will work, because that influences this. But once they start having proper fuel, I don't think it's a problem of bringing your tanker, whatever, truck next to your friend's whatever tank, and starting a refuel process. We'll have to see, because a lot of this refueling work means standardization of fuel ports throughout. Right now, what was it? How many ships, Thorsten? Do you remember how?
No. It's but I think it's above 160, is it?
That's a lot of work.
Somewhere there. It's in the hundreds.
A lot of regression.
By the time we get this, probably we'll have vehicles in the hundreds too. So that's where the problem comes. The system we can develop fairly quickly, and especially if we have ship refueling already done. I'm not worried doing it for land vehicles, but we'll be retrofitting all of the land vehicles to have fuel ports. For example, for the ships, we're doing this right now for ships, and we've gone, well, what does make sense, and where does it make sense on every ship? And we found a very good logic here is like, if it's pretty much facing forward, we're facing towards that same direction as ship forward, and when that boom arm comes is in view of the pilot, that is pretty much the best position you can get. So you always get that view of the boom arm coming, approaching. You can kind of go left, right. Okay, bam, I'm in. And it's always important to be forward, because if it's sideways, when you're flying the ship, it's very hard to coordinate and touch 2 points that are not oriented to your forward direction. It's a mind-boggling thing, unless you rely on the UI, which helps you. But if anyone tries to dock some ship that the docking port is off axis, you will know what that means.
Yeah, I mean, like, the 890 jump is just that, isn't it?
All right. All right. We've touched a little bit on mining, long distance probing, loot generation, harvestables, refueling. I skipped one, but we did it before refueling. Refining. Let's talk about resource management a little bit.
Okay, capacitor
we
gameplay
haven't
and stuff.
disclosed. Actually, you and I have never discussed. You discussed with Count Disco back around Halloween time, the beginnings of resource management when you were prototyping that out. What can you tell us about our current progress, where we're at?
There's been a lot of silence on that, and for very good reasons. The programmer that works on this has had to go in the bowels of code and refactor pretty much everything with how our SC items work when it comes to how they function, how they generate resources. There's been so much groundwork. We expected there to be probably about half a year of groundwork. It turned out to be a lot more. This is a thing that will affect everything from ships to vehicles to stations. It's an incredibly, it touches the core of how our game functions. And I think at this moment, we are at the point where we start working on the actual gameplay. I know already there's heavy discussions, even this morning or yesterday, there were heavy discussions of how we get the tanks on the Starfarer for refueling to transfer fuels between each other and the ship, because we want that to use the resource management and the distribution. We don't want to build another system just for refueling, or another system just for, I don't know, putting ammo into weapons on a ship, or I don't know, power, or all these things. There needs to be one system. All items in the game work with this system. We don't have 10 pieces of code that we need 10 programmers to oversee and maintain. Whenever one breaks, it's a different from the other one. It's one system. If something breaks, you know exactly where to look. But we are getting to the point where we're starting to see this being used in gameplay. It's still going to be quite a bit till we see a full ship where you can start cutting power, rerouting power, sabotaging. If you remove this item, or this item runs out of fuel or out of power, this happens. We're still a bit out. I don't want to give out. I don't want to give out any date, because I don't know it. As you can see, our initial estimation of how much that groundwork of code needs to be was, we estimated half of what it actually was.
Right.
Oh, geez.
But this is the moment where there's also a good moment, because a lot of other programmers can start jumping in on this thing and starting to integrate. Whoever works on weapons needs to integrate this. How do you get your ammo from a general ammo supply crate? Automatic. How do you power the weapon? Does it need CPU? Does it need all these things? And how do you? The shield guy is going to do the same. The guy that builds power supply needs to work with it. So we can start. We're at the point where we can slowly start to bring in more people into this as the groundwork has been completed.
It sounds like this particular part of resource management is like way in the future, because normally, you know, Dan, he's pretty upbeat about stuff, you know, like all the other features he's talked about so far, he's basically had one particular kind of optimistic tone, but with this he's like, yeah, it's taking like twice as long and that kind of thing. So I wouldn't expect 2022 or even 2023 with this one. I don't know, like it sounds like it's you know, like one of those things for end game visualization of Star Citizen.
So yeah, and if you guys haven't seen it, check out. It was the Halloween episode for last year, where Dan gave a wonderful walkthrough of the entire foundation, the prototype for resource management. This is the new foundation for, I mean, I don't want to say everything in the Stars and Universe, but I mean, it is space, like you said, space stations, spacecraft, habitats, ground habitats. It is a uniform system that will determine how everything feeds into everything else, and it's that systemic system that we've been working towards and building towards and saying that we've wanted for so long, and now it's actually in active development. So it's an exciting time.
So is that to say that we'll see this in the roadmap at some point? Again, he's like, he doesn't want to give a particular date. I don't think they should ever give dates because it's never a good thing, especially on camera. But if it's something that they've confirmed is now actively developing and they're going to be adding developers to it as time goes on, then I guess we'll have to wait and see. But again, I wouldn't expect this for this year at the very least, like maybe Q3, Q4 next year, I feel.
So look forward to that. What else do we got here? Let's see what we have going. Let's touch on mining a little bit before we wrap up.
Okay.
There have been many updates to mining over the last couple years. Are we done? Is mining done? Is it feature complete? Or
I wonder if was he reading that question, because mining is the most robust system currently in the game. But and mining in this game compared to others is pretty big. Like there's so much more to do mining in this game than there is mining in any other game I've played, right? But I hope they're not done. Like there's still, because of what they have and all the groundwork they have laid out, there's so much they could do to expand it that would make it pretty even more amazing.
Is there more coming down the pipe?
I think mining is in a good place now. I mean,
okay.
We can keep tweaking. I think we need a tweak of content and the difficulty, and bringing in more difficult rocks that require multiple players with super high-end gear to break, but also super high yield of resources from them. I think that is kind of missing from a content perspective. From a system perspective, when it comes to small, let's not call it small ship mining, it's pretty much medium ship mining, because a prospector and a mole are not that small. We're in a good place now where the people that were working on this are trying to help now with other systems in other parts of the game. So we're gonna, I don't want to say put it on hold, but it's going to slow down development on mining.
Right.
Is it done? No, far from it. There's still the Orion. There's still, when we get that Orion out and all the bells and whistles that come with it, that's probably when I'm going to say, yeah, that is mining. It's complete.
Right.
There's still some stuff we can do on FPS mining. FPS mining was released and didn't receive much love for 2 years, more than 2 years, 2 years, somewhere there. It's an integral part of the game, but it could use some love. We've expanded on the ship mining. We've done consumables, we've done components, we've done gadgets. This does not exist for FPS mining. So
okay. So here's the confirmation that I needed. So FPS mining, mining gadgets, the ones where you go out, you place it onto the object to change the properties, is shipwise, not FPS. I was like, maybe it's going to be FPS, but that's Dan basically saying that, FPS mining still means some love. At the very least, FPS mining needs an extraction laser or something.
We would like to be able to take that multi-tool and equip it a bit more. I know the actor feature team are also working on a specialized version of the mining tool, because they're doing the same for a lot of the tools like tractor beam, and all these things. They're going to get specialized version, more powerful, but they're not modular where you can just change an attachment and use it for something else.
Yeah.
Sorry, my voice is gone. Probably the actor feature guys are going like, stop talking about that. So that's the idea. Bringing in some of that flavor that we have for ships into FPS mining, that is something we can still do now and fairly easily. But there's other things that are way, way, way more important right now.
All right. That's it, guys. We only got one more question left, but it's a question for everybody here. We've talked about resource management, mining, long-distance probing, loot generation, refining, refueling, all that stuff. What is the one thing, if you had to pick, it's hard to pick favorites between your children, but what is the one thing that your team is working on right now that has each one of you most excited for the future? Okay. And we're going to start with that, Jacob, because he's been quiet for a little while. What you got, Jacob?
I'm kind of biased because loot generation's what I've been working on mainly for the past 6 months, so I'm excited about loot generation. I'm really looking forward to populating the universe with stuff for players to find. Yeah.
Awesome. How about you, Thorsten?
Also biased in that regards. Yeah. So I'm a huge Starfarer fan, so I'm looking forward to finally have it full of more additional functions. But the feature that actually
Damn it, he doesn't get specific.
more interesting for me in terms of gameplay is actually the atmospheric depth damage. So I can see already, like you already mentioned it, like the hunt for Red October situations. So that probably will be fun.
That's kind of cool
You're in a
sounding.
dogfight in the atmosphere of Crusader, and you know your ship has a higher depth resistance than theirs. So let's see if you can drag them down into the core of Crusader with you. Yeah.
That's really cool sounding.
Dan.
I'm going to be different.
Of course I haven't.
I'm going to choose the long distance probing stuff. I think that's going to open
Long distance
the game
probing sounds awesome.
so much. I think the problem with Star Citizen right now is we have the planets, we have the moons. There's some activity happening there. There's Lagrange points, some activity happening there. But if you look at the space we have in a solar system, that is the 0.1% of the space we use.
Mm-hmm.
Once long distance probing comes in, we'll be able to dynamically spawn an asteroid cluster, a wreck, a bunch of pirates attacking a hauler. Anything you can imagine, a small station that they're producing drugs there or high-end weaponry. We spawn it. It's a temporary location, might be there for this week or this month or this day. Whoever finds it first gets to, well, if they can tackle it, gets to get the rewards. The miners are going to have, I'm expecting the mining organization to have a dedicated probing division where they just
Of course they will. Of course they will.
A new asteroid cluster. Everyone just rush there, strip mining, and you make the profit. Whoever finds it first is going to make the money. Whoever finds it second pretty much makes nothing unless they're pirates, and then they find some miners there, and then they make some money.
So that's the whole talk about the whole finite. Is it finite or finite? It's infinite. You don't say infinite. Anyway, yeah, the whole finite loot or finite resources within the Star Citizen. Like, when the game gets to a stage where they're not going to keep turning over the servers and that kind of thing, then like places like Yella and all these things will be like basically worn out by the players in a space of a couple weeks or months, right? And then it's going to be all about this probe scanning and that kind of thing. So does that mean that these asteroids and stuff that the miners and probe divisions, as he's called them, will find, does that mean that those would have always existed, like with the generation of the servers and generation of the universe, or are they spawning in via probability volume? Because I know things like Rex and stuff will likely be via probability, but the resources, I guess we will never really know unless they specify. But it sounds really cool. It does sound awesome to be part of that group that will find things like the mineable resources and be the first to do it, and even espionage and the bigger your org, the more likely people will fall through the cracks, and you'll have a mole, not the mining kind but the other one, and they'll tell somebody else, hey, we just found a really cool mining node and stuff, we have a refinery set on, and it's nobody's here right now, you can come and take it all. I want that in Star Citizen. Not that I'd be part of it, but I'm just all for the stories that people will make and tell and share because of all this stuff happening.
The pirates are going to have so much fun with this because this is how you find other people mining, hauling, doing other things. So there's so much. It pretty much makes the entire solar system space our playground, and we can do stuff that we generate, stuff that players do there, that others can find stuff. It just brings the entire solar system to life.
Dan Truffin, really into long distance probing. That's it, guys. That's our show. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy weeks. Thorsten, Jacob, congratulations on your first Star Citizen Live. Hope you survived the experience. Folks, be sure you stay tuned next Wednesday. Wednesday. Next Thursday is our last.
All right, so yeah, that was that for SCL. Again, really cool to have Dan Truffin and yeah, his two new employees there talking about all these different things in the PU. Man, so much to think about, so much to talk about, but I've already taken so much of your time. So thank you for watching. People who are watching on YouTube, for those on Twitch, we'll keep doing what we're doing, but let's do the old sign out. So if you enjoyed this kind of like a deeper talk about what they just talked about, and you know, with references and all that stuff, then please do. And if of course you've made it to the end, I think we've maybe spent what, like 2 or 3 hours on a 1 hour video or something. But thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one, the next time they do something like this. Feel free to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.